suspicion of her own. She put up her hands and shook her head. "What does Plantagenet think about it?" asked the Duke. Plantagenet Palliser was the full name of the Duke's nephew and heir. The Duke's mind was evidently much disturbed. "He doesn't think that either the box or the diamonds were ever worth 5 farthings," said Lady Glencora. "The diamonds not in the box!" repeated the Duke. "Madame Max, do you believe that the diamonds were not in the box?" Madame Goesler shrugged her shoulders and made no answer, but the shrugging of her shoulders was quite satisfactory to the Duke, who always thought that Madame Goesler did everything better than anybody else. Lady Glencora stayed with her uncle for the best part of an hour, and every word spoken was devoted to Lizzie and her necklace. But as this new idea had been broached, and as they had no other information than that conveyed in the telegram, very little light could be thrown upon it. But on the next morning there came a letter from Barrington Erle to Lady Glencora, which told so much, and hinted so much more, that it will be well to give it to the reader. Travellers, 29 January, 186 . My dear Lady Glencora, I hope you got my telegram yesterday. I had just seen Mackintosh, on whose behalf, however, I must say that he told me as little as he possibly could. It is leaking out, however, on every side, that the police believe that when the box was taken out of the room at Carlisle, the diamonds were not in it. As far as I can learn, they ground this suspicion on the fact that they cannot trace the stones. They say that if such a lot of diamonds had been through the thieves' market in London, they would have left some track behind them. As far as I can judge, Mackintosh thinks that Lord George has them, but that her ladyship gave them to him, and that this little game of the robbery at Carlisle was planned to put John Eustace and the lawyers off the scent. If it should turn out that the box was opened before it left Portray, that the door of her ladyship's room was cut by her ladyship's self, or by his lordship with her ladyship's aid, and that the fragments of the box were carried out of the hotel by his lordship in person, it will altogether have been so delightful a plot that all concerned in it ought to be canonized, or at least allowed to keep their plunder. One of the old detectives told me that the opening of the box under the arch of the railway, in an exposed place, could hardly have been executed so neatly as was done; that no thief so situated would have given the time necessary to it, and that if there had been thieves at all at work, they would have been traced. Against this there is the certain fact, as I have heard from various men engaged in the inquiry, that certain persons among the community of thieves are very much at loggerheads with each other, the higher or creative department in thiefdom accusing the lower or mechanical department of gross treachery in having appropriated to its own sole profit plunder, for the taking of which it had undertaken to receive a certain stipulated price. But then it may be the case that his lordship and her ladyship have set such a rumour abroad for the sake of putting the police off the scent. Upon the whole, the little mystery is quite delightful, and has put the ballot and poor Mr. Palliser's 5-farthinged penny quite out of joint. Nobody now cares for anything except the Eustace diamonds. Lord George, I am told, has offered to fight everybody or anybody, beginning with Lord Fawn and ending with Major Mackintosh. Should he be innocent, which, of course, is possible, the thing must be annoying. I should not at all wonder myself if it should turn out that her ladyship left them in Scotland. The place there, however, has been searched, in compliance with an order from the police and by her ladyship's consent. Don't let Mr. Palliser quite kill himself. I hope the Bonteen plan answers. I never knew a man who could find more farthings in a shilling than Mr. Bonteen. Remember me very kindly to the Duke, and pray enable poor Fawn to keep up his spirits. If he likes to arrange a meeting with Lord George, I shall be only too happy to be his friend. You remember our last duel. Chiltern is with you, and can put Fawn up to the proper way of getting over to Flanders, and of returning, should he chance to escape. Yours always most faithfully, Barrington Erle. Of course I'll keep you posted in everything respecting the necklace till you come to town yourself. The whole of this letter Lady Glencora read to the Duke, to Lady Chiltern, and to Madame Goesler, and the principal contents of it she repeated to the entire company. It was certainly the general belief at Matching that Lord George had the diamonds in his possession, either with or without the assistance of their late fair possessor. The Duke was struck with awe when he thought of all the circumstances. "The brother of a marquis!" he said to his nephew's wife. "It's such a disgrace to the peerage." "As for that, Duke," said Lady Glencora, "the peerage is used to it by this time." "I never heard of such an affair as this before." "I don't see why the brother of a marquis shouldn't turn thief as well as anybody else. They say he hasn't got anything of his own, and I suppose that is what makes men steal other people's property. Peers go into trade, and peeresses gamble on the Stock Exchange. Peers become bankrupt, and the sons of peers run away, just like other men. I don't see why all enterprises should not be open to them. But to think of that little purring cat, Lady Eustace, having been so very, very clever! It makes me quite envious." All this took place in the morning, that is, about 2 o'clock, but after dinner the subject became general. There might be some little reticence in regard to Lord Fawn's feelings, but it was not sufficient to banish a subject so interesting from the minds and lips of the company. "The Tewett marriage is to come off after all," said Mrs. Bonteen. "I've a letter from dear Mrs. Rutter telling me so as a fact." "I wonder whether Miss Roanoke will be allowed to wear one or two of the diamonds at the wedding," suggested one of the private secretaries. "Nobody will dare to wear a diamond at all next season," said Lady Glencora. "As for my own, I shan't think of having them out. I should always feel that I was being inspected." "Unless they unravel the mystery," said Madame Goesler. "I hope they won't do that," said Lady Glencora. "The play is too good to come to an end so soon. If we hear that Lord George is engaged to Lady Eustace, nothing, I suppose, can be done to stop the marriage." "Why shouldn't she marry if she pleases?" asked Mr. Palliser. "I've not the slightest objection to her being married. I hope she will, with all my heart. I certainly think she should have her husband, after buying him at such a price. I suppose Lord Fawn won't forbid the banns?" These last words were only whispered to her next neighbour, Lord Chiltern, but poor Lord Fawn saw the whisper, and was aware that it must have had reference to his condition. On the next morning there came further news. The police had asked permission from their occupants to search the rooms in which lived Lady Eustace and Lord George, and in each case the permission had been refused. So said Barrington Erle in his letter to Lady Glencora. Lord George had told the applicant, very roughly, that nobody should touch any article belonging to him without a search warrant. If any magistrate would dare to give such a warrant, let him do it. I'm told that Lord George acts the indignant madman uncommonly well, said Barrington Erle in his letter. As for poor Lizzie, she had fainted when the proposition was made to her. The request was renewed as soon as she had been brought to herself, and then she refused, on the advice, as she said, of her cousin, Mr. Greystock. Barrington Erle went on to say that the police were very much blamed. It was believed that no information could be laid before a magistrate sufficient to justify